No, thanks to Dave for inviting me to come along. I think I came before many years ago, but I've been to Unite Building many times. So my name is Pinar, and I work in the migration sector at a community level, but I've just submitted my thesis on Tuesday for my PhD after 4 years, so yay! And I started a new job as a research associate at the University of Glasgow as well, doing a work on sustainability and multilingualism and migration. But yeah, today I wanted to just briefly speak about just experiences of what's been going on recently for people who are in the asylum process and people who have refugee status, and briefly talk about some of the recent incidents around the hotel accommodations and around in communities as well. So when someone's in the asylum process, they experience many issues, as you can see here on the slides, from being put into detention centres to having no time limit on detention. So UK is the only country in the international community without a time limit on detention. So if somebody was to have a refusal on their case and then put in a detention centre, they could be there for a very long time. And in Scotland we have the Dungavel Immigration Removal Centre. In the last few years there has been a significant changes within the immigration laws, especially with the Nationality and Borders Act in 2022. And this was the first act that said about creating an offshore processing centres for UK. So the talk about Rwanda came in within this act. And then we had the Illegal Migration Act, and within this act it was mainly talking about creating a two-tier refugee system where we have people who are called as the deserving and the undeserving people who arrive here legally and illegally as used by the politicians. We then had the Rwanda Act, but that's been scrapped, thankfully. And now we have another one, which is the Border Security, Asylum and Immigration Bill. And this is the one that's being created by the current Labour government. Anyway, we could talk about the Labour conference another time for a very long time. A few of the problems people who are in the asylum process experiences not having the right to work, and this is an area that we've been campaigning on for a very long time. And it wasn't used to be like this. Before 2002, people did have the right to work if they were in the asylum process, but the law was changed in 2002 to the current process, which is people don't have the right to work. They can only apply after 1 year, which is jobs in the shortage occupation list. And now we have the hotel accommodation. So I wanted to briefly touch about the context in Scotland, what's been experienced by people. The immigration system itself has been creating a structure which enables people to live in a notion of isolation where their mental health and well-being are significantly being degraded. And we've been seeing this, unfortunately, with what's been going on at the moment, people being targeted around the hotel accommodations. Accessing lawyers has been a significant barrier. So the number of immigration lawyers we have in Scotland is compared to the number of people who are in the asylum process and who have been waiting for a very long time, bless you, it doesn't add up. A lot of the lawyers, immigration lawyers, are based in Glasgow and a few of them in Edinburgh, but due to being the dispersal process at the moment across the country, such as people being dispersed to Aberdeen, Dundee, Perth, there are no immigration lawyers there, so a lot of people need to either travel to Glasgow or they need to somehow find a support organisation. I wanted to touch a lot about the hotel accommodations and the increase in racism. This was a picture that I took in 2020, and it was a picture that we put some banner, some cardboard messages, and this was when the first people were starting to be put into hotel accommodation. So before 2020, people were dispersed into communities. So if somebody was dispersed into Scotland, they would be accommodated by mayors and they would be in a community housing, like normal housing. But in 2020, Home Office decided to change this, so anyone who was arriving new and already in the asylum accommodations, they were removed from their homes and put into hotels. This picture was taken outside the Macleay's Hotel, which is not actually far from here. It's about 10 minutes walk. It's behind the CCA in Sucky Hall Street. And we had gathered there because one of the residents of the hotel had committed suicide, and he was a 30-year-old Syrian refugee. And we wanted to highlight that using hotel accommodation in the long term is going to create so much tensions in communities, because communities were not being informed about these hotels being used in their area. And sadly, it's really frustrating for us because we had highlighted this back in 2020 that using hotels is not the way forward. Like I said, it's relating back to issues around accessing justice, accessing education. Again, once somebody is in a hotel accommodation, they could be dispersed anywhere across the country and not just in Scotland, so they could be dispersed down to England as well. So we had, like, I've known people where they've been in a hotel for 9 months and they just got accepted to college to study, and then they got a letter from Home Office saying we're going to remove you down to Newcastle like tomorrow, and then that person has to go there and then find a new lawyer because of the legal system difference. They will need to find a new lawyer down in England and then restart the whole process again. And you can imagine the impact that has on people's mental health, well-being, but also for the communities, because we hear a lot from the media and from politicians saying like, oh, people need to integrate, they need to learn the language, they need to, like, we need to know these people. But at the same time, you're creating a system where people are just like, like a ping pong, where they're just being sent from one place to another, where people cannot settle for a long period of time. So then they have to just relive the trauma and then relive and relearn the support mechanisms around there. Maybe just to, I think I've got a little bit more time, just to share about the importance of like trade unions and the importance of how we need to work within communities at the moment, because like I said, since 2020 we've been trying to warn the Scottish Government, the local authorities, by telling everyone that you need to stop using hotel accommodations because it's not a humane way of housing people. Again, it's hotels, it's not homes. You would go to a holiday, stay in a hotel for a week or two max. You wouldn't live there. And another thing is, once people are in a hotel accommodation, they are giving £9 per week. So £9 per week is for everything, pretty much. So for travel, to buy clothes, I don't know, for anyone to live a normal life. There's no ending on this, on the hotel accommodation. Since 2020, every year when we had meetings with Home Office and Migrant Help, they kept saying, oh, we're going to stop using hotels next year. And then next year happens and they're like, we're going to close it next year. It's like, okay. So now we're in a state where the tension has been created in the communities. Unfortunately, the far right has been they've been having some bases in some of the communities. And it's such a shame, like places like Falkirk, Perth, that I've attended a few of the protests, the tension is there, and it's unfortunate that people are being pretty much that usual division and divide, and where people are just being, fight against each other, and where you have some members of the community who are just frustrated. You can see that they're just angry at the system. They're just angry that things are just not right. And then you have the far right coming in and just saying, oh, who are these people in the hotel accommodations? Why are they here? And these are the things that we've been highlighting since 2020 to say, at least have a meeting, like have a community meeting. It's so easy to organise. People just want to know, why are people in the hotels? Who are they? And what sort of people are based there? But now it's sort of past that stage where it's very difficult to have a conversation. And I think the role of community organisations, faith groups, trade unions is vital to break that tension, because we need to start mobilising to understand, okay, these are the problems, we're having funding cuts, there's issues around safety, yes, we need to acknowledge that, but that's always been in there.
Yeah.
Would you like to sit? So we need to start having these conversations in communities where we try to acknowledge what the root causes of the problems and where these myths are coming from. I think local groups in places like Falkirk and Perth, they've been trying to do this and I think it's been working quite well, where they're trying to engage with the local communities. One of the first protests I attended at Falkirk, I tried to make this conversation corner. It didn't work, but I just wanted to have that breakdown of, let's have a conversation. You know, it's going to be uncomfortable and it's going to be maybe a difficult conversation, but we just need to have it, and that's okay. Like, some people might ask questions like, why are they in the hotels? That's a fair enough question, and we just need to talk that this is the policy by the Home Office. Or they might want to ask, but do they have a background check? It's like, okay, people do actually get a background check when they arrive. They get their, fingers printed, and it's like there is a background check. So, and I tried to do that conversation, but it just didn't happen because it's too crowded, too many people shouting nasty things. I got shouted. I got called pedo and rapist like throughout the day, and I was like, what did I do? Like, I'm just trying to have a conversation with you. Let's just talk. And it's so unfortunate that these spaces and the problems that people are having is being hijacked. So I think we've got lots of work to do collectively to challenge these narratives, and to. It's funny because when we started the campaign with Refugees for Justice, we wanted to end hotel detention because we don't want the hotel to be used. But now it's like the right is saying, we don't want the hotels. I still think people belong in communities. We had everything worked perfectly fine before 2020, where people were being housed. And one thing people forget is the amount of money and the profit these hotel owners make, because they get millions to house someone, and then you look at the support that they're given, £9 a week. Yes, they get provided the meals, but then the quality of the meals, and again they get given They get given the same number of support, whether that's £9 or the quality of the food as well. So there's nothing changing, and then at the same time, these hotels were hotels that was going to be closed anyway. So they're just making profit out of people's journeys and people's experiences. And that's something that people forget. So I think that's all I wanted to chat about, but it'd be really nice to hear what everyone is thinking and how we can, I guess for me, is how we can mobilise the communities to go back to talking about, with one another, about issues in the communities, getting the trade unions being more active, like the one in Falkirk, the Falkirk Trades Council, wasn't it? Yeah, they've been restarting and they've been doing amazing work. I know like the Patriotic Alternative are trying to hijack the community in Clydebank, and there's another trade council there. So I want to know how we can start mobilising this, but how we can do it in a way that we listen to one another, because that's one thing I noticed at protest, or generally, people just don't feel like they've been listened to, and they just feel this anger inside them, and so much anger is scary. It's like this anger has, it bursts at some point, and that's what happened in that protest when we went. I think Dave, you were there, weren't you? Yeah, like they started to they threw flares at us, and usually that doesn't happen, and they start throwing eggs. Like, that's dangerous. And I was thinking, if we were not there to counter protest, they would have set the hotel on fire 100%, because you could see the anger in their faces, and so that's all I've got to say, but it'd be nice to just have a chat about what we can do and how we can tackle this. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much for that.
I like to think we can have a couple of questions for Pinar, but we'll have to keep it within a certain guidelines. Anybody want to ask Pinar anything?
Anita's got her hand up.
Anita?
Thanks, Chair. Pinar, thank you very much for such an informative presentation. And I've just been back from holiday, so I couldn't, yesterday actually, so I couldn't come into to the meeting in person today. But thank you very much. I have one comment and one question, and I'll go quickly. The comment is, I find it absolutely appalling that neither the police or community members or people involved in the hotel situation don't clearly state what the services are that these asylum seekers receive. This is not the Hilton. We're not speaking of luxury services or food for people, and I think that it should be made public what they're actually receiving, because it's minimal and in many cases undesirable, and it would not be acceptable to ordinary citizens living in Glasgow or in Scotland. That's my comment. My question is, can you or will you share with us your view of the possibility of Scotland ever being able to determine its own immigration and asylum policies? If you can, I realize that you might not be able to address that.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
Thank you.
That's a question, and I'll ask Drew. Do you want to come in, Drew?
It's really a comment following on from what Anita was saying there, because the information that you gave there is absolutely crucial for people to get. But the information, I don't think, should be put out by organisations such like you. I think the information should be put out by trade unions, and it would be good if there was a fact sheet with the detailed bullet points that you put out there, sent to all members, and at the same time there should be motions from people who are in political parties like the Labour Party and the SNP for them to do likewise to its membership, because if it came purely from the refugee asylum seeker sector, then it would be seen as propaganda. It would be downplayed by the far right. But if trade unions actively put their money where their mouth is and put out that information, then I think you might get a sea change within communities, because trade unions are grounded in local communities, as are ordinary members of political parties. So the information could be put out in a constructive way so that folk can break down the nonsense and the misinformation that the far right are putting out. That's all, Chair. Thanks.
Dave?
Hold on, Dave, hold on. Let me get the computer set up.
Thanks, Pinar, for coming. I mean, one of the big problems is, clearly the far right are making the most of this, exploiting it. And actually that's a problem, because the far right is much bigger than it was in the 70s. It's funded by people. Well, if you watched their show in London, you would see who was speaking the screens. Elon Musk, people like Trump, they're backed by Trump, they have fantastic amounts of money. But I think the most damaging thing is the government and the mainstream media, actually, because they are legitimising. If you look at in virtually every news programme, the leader of Reform, who has got very few seats at the moment, that won't be the case, gets a lot more airtime than any other politician relative to the number of seats they've got. And the media, the BBC particularly, it suits their agenda. Why? Because the BBC is supposed to be publicly owned, but most of the mass media is privately owned, and the BBC panders to it. I mean, if you look at, I can't even read the right-wing press anymore. It just makes me so angry. You get into news agents and you see these continual, often completely inaccurate stories about young men coming to start wars in Britain, Islamophobia, lies about the benefits that folk get, which is easily disproved. The good thing is that Unite, and I hope they release it to the members, have produced a document for guidance on how to deal with immigration in the far right. And there's really good facts and figures in it, but what folk actually get, how miserably they're treated, the accommodation that they live in, the fact that they're not allowed to work, and the way they're treated. And it needs to get out to our members, and we need to get it known, because actually, folk have got genuine concerns, because we're living in a pretty shitty society that's getting worse. The problem is that they're being allowed to target The far right are being allowed to target, and it's actually not just asylum seekers now. In London, if you'd been in London 2 weeks ago, they were attacking women, they were attacking native UK people because of the colour of their skin. There's lots of that, and that's continuing. The good thing about the Falkirk, because there's been protests since the start, it started off with about 2,000 in the first counter protest, and people got afraid. There was about 100 on the other side, and if those 100 hadn't been there, I think the far right would have led it to attack. The good thing about the protests is their numbers have started to dwindle. A lot of folk have got reasonable concerns. I don't think want to be associated with some of the people that are organising these protests, who are extremely far right. I mean, even some of the good press, like the Evening Times, the National and the Glasgow Herald, have actually produced some of the facts and figures about who's behind some of these things and these flag displays that are happening all over the country. But actually, the fight against it continues despite the successes we've had, because on Falkirk on Saturday there's another counter protest, and in Perth on Saturday there's another counter protest. And fortunately we've got, as well as Stand Up to Racism in the TUC, you've got things like local people in Falkirk organising a group called Falkirk for All. You've got people organising a group called Perth Against Racism, who've been working to build links in the community and do some of the things. But it's a big problem, and I think it's an important one for the trade unions, and it's actually going to get worse before it gets better, I think. So I'd like to thank, I think we need to just finish with saying, I've seen the document that Unite have written. They need to get the stuff out to their members. It's very, very good. Just the big politics of it, but more importantly the facts and figures that it contains.
Thanks, Dave. Right, Linda, last one.
Okay. I think Pinar is absolutely right about the seething anger which they are exploiting. I mean, the destitution in this country is often unseen, but it's absolutely there. People, and I mean use the word destitute, so there's an absolute seething anger. So suppose if we're going to fight the right wing, these fascists, yes, on the streets and all the rest of it, absolutely, but we also have to come up with solutions. And these solutions have got to be around health, got to be around housing, employment, benefits, pensions, all these sort of things. These are the key things. Now the slogan, refugees are welcome here, is important because we want to have that atmosphere. That is absolutely important. But we have to advance on that by having placards, chants, everything else around all these class issues. Because if we just stick to the refugees are welcome here, it's going to be much more difficult to mobilise these communities that we want to do. We have to mobilise around class issues as well as things like refugees are welcome here. So I think we have to move, we have to advance on what we're doing now around these class issues and really put the solutions up front. That's what I think we should be doing.
Well, Pinar, you've heard a few there.
Right, there's
Yeah.
On you go if you like. Wait a minute. No, that's it.
No problem. Did you want to come in or?
No, we'll come back. If we've got the time, we'll come back.
Yeah. Yeah, I think everybody mentioned like the point about how it needs to be a collaboration, and the unity there needs to be for everyone's responsibility, not just the refugee organisations, because like you said, that's just not going to work if it's just one group of people saying that we need the changes. Just to go back to Anita's point about the possibility of immigration policies. So there was a white paper on immigration previously that was produced, but my worry has always been, like previously during the independence time, everybody says, refugees welcome, Scotland is doing things differently, and even back then my main concern was, we say this, but if in reality is this what everybody is feeling? Is this just a few people's view, or is it everyone's? And I think what the sad thing has been is all these thoughts have been now visible. The thing about the number of people we should have, how would the borders look like? It's worrying me that if Scotland had control over immigration, we were going to fall into the same narrative of, there are too many, or everyone's going to exploit. And it's very unfortunate that I think we're slowly falling into that narrative. I still think in Scotland we can do things differently, but we just need to challenge, as you've said, about how do we go beyond saying refugees are welcome here, but how do we think beyond that? And I think outlining that and speaking with the communities now to get rid of those far-right ideas is so important. And it's not just far-right ideas. Some of the people do have questions, and it's like, okay, let's have a conversation about it. But then for me, there comes a point where it's like, okay, we are having a conversation, you're not listening, you are crossing the line, and I can't really talk with you. And yeah, I think the workaround, there are lots of organisations and people doing great work to create welcoming spaces, but we need to keep doing that, and we need to keep reflecting people's stories, like what you said, Dave, about everybody needs to know the rights. And even at the Falkirk one, at the conversation corner, I had made a nice placard and stuff, put flowers on it, being like, conversation corner, let's come and have a chat. And when I was having a chat with this young group of boys, you know, you could see how they're innocent there, and they're just believing what's been fed to them. And they were just saying simple things like, oh, but you know, these guys are illegal. That's what I've been hearing on TikTok. And then the minute you say, well, actually, people have the right to seek asylum under international law. And then they were going around to saying to their pals, oh, she just told me they're legal though. Like, you could see how easily people are just, you know, listening to things and just getting drawn into that. Yeah, and I think the more we have this conversation is to say, okay, what are you fearing? What is the issues? And the issue about like the women's safety, we've created the Women's Against the Far Right Scotland, and we are going to have a launch on Tuesday. I think it's sold out now. There's like 300 people signed up, and over 2,000 people signed the open letter as well. And that just shows there are existing problems in the community, but these are being hijacked by the wrong people, and these problems are going to happen. And one of the questions I asked to the boy was, I said, if the hotel's shut, is all the problem going to be solved? Because he kept saying to me, oh, but what about our own homeless people? And I said to him, do you think if the hotel is closed down and the people in the hotels are sent to somewhere else, is the problem about housing, is it going to be solved? The problem about not having enough funding, or is the safety issue, is that going to be solved? And he really had a genuine thought, and he was like, no, I don't think so. You know, like we will still have it exist, that issues will exist. And that for me was, okay, this was a group of people, young teenagers, but at least they got something out of it. And I think we just need to keep doing that, and hope that for the future, that when we create our own immigration system, that it would be based on not what we have at the moment, but we have a long road for it. And it is worrying, like, since independence, again, that slogan, refugees are welcome, yes, but what does that mean? Like, do we all agree on it? And I think we need to have that solid base to say that we need to have a system that is based on common understanding, respecting international law, respecting human rights. If we don't have that, then that's dangerous for the future. I'll just leave it there, I think, but it was so good suggestions about what does that mean after saying refugees welcome on the fact sheets. I'll take that back to my colleagues and maybe share it. Somebody had their hand on online, but I'll give it back to you, Chair.
Right, so David Edwards, I'm a senior moment, sorry.
Oh, well, hopefully we'll be careful what we do here. We don't let you over. No, you've done very well, but how many speakers have we got?
1, 2, there was somebody else over here.
Somebody at the
Well, if there's two, that's it. Finished. Okay. Yes, here you come. Dave will come for you. You're next.
They're both called David. 2 Davids, 2 Davids.
You've already spoke.
No, it's the other David.
Please, to ask David deliver houses to refugees originally through Refugee back in 2020, and now with Red Cross as well volunteered. So I've seen in practice what you're talking about the hotels, and one of the things right from the off, one of the things I asked you never was food. And exactly in the point you said, they said They couldn't eat the food in the hotels. People told you, oh, it's great, these hotels, they get food, they never comes. And I get some people say you shouldn't really call them hotels either, because they don't operate like what you think as a hotel. You're already probably keep showing it. We would open the hotels, I think it's what James O'Brien does. So, and think about the facilities, the food that gets delivered to. They have no facilities for cooking it some. Whereas, as you say, if you go back to the system when they were in a community, at least they have kids, they could cook the fresh food and they would be part of the community. But I think we could get a little bit depressed about how the white wave is. On the other hand, you've got people like refugees. If you ever go into their office, which they could speak, and it's community help for people to come in and feel part of something with other people. So it tries to break down the isolation that you say. But in the hotels, it's really difficult now. The one I go to, Go Urbany, Hazy and West, but now locked the front gate. So it's so bad enough for the people in the hotels before, but now because of the fears, threats to hotels that are to lock the outside gate, put security up, I feel as though they locked up something. But I think there's the other side of it, as I said, there's lots of people who want to help refugees, as seen by refugees. There was a fantastic five-a-side football tournament in Summit down on that side, where the community came together and refugee teams. So that is that side, but then we got politicians on both sides, the current government as well, just constantly going along with this propaganda. And I think I totally agree with Linda, we've got to put out other things, because if you want to get people out, hotels and into the community, you need housing. You need a housing program. That's not happening at the moment. The government supposedly says they're going to do 1.5 million houses in Bar. It's making no progress on that whatsoever, because it's relying on the private building from money, etc. You need public investment, local authority, building houses. So, yeah, you need to.
Thank you. Dave Edwards.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I just basically like to more or less reiterate and agree with what Linda was saying and what Pinar was saying in our last regrets about the class issues in society's exotic problems. We're having a housing emergency in this country. We have a crisis in the NHS. Now, it's the government that have created these problems, not the refugees. Because you can't get a house, because you've got to wait in the queue at A&E, it's not the refugees' fault, it's the government's fault. And these issues have to be addressed. And the societal problems like that, they engender resentment in the community, at the very least dissatisfaction, and far right, not just the far right, the Tories, and the right wing, press allowed to scapegoat the refugees. And we've got to hammer home that it's not the refugees' fault, it's the government's fault.
Thanks. What answer any of that? Pinar, are you quite happy?
No, I think just what you said about the housing. So the unfortunate thing is when people are in the asylum process, the mayors, they already have the housing contract, and there are houses that exist because that's what they do. Like they have the 10-year contract on the Home Office, and they get million bonus. But by using the hotels, they're making so much profit because they don't have to use the houses that already exist, and they don't have to place people into communities, and that means they're already, renting, using these houses. But when they use a hotel, then everybody, like 100 people, is already in one hotel. So the profit that Mayors is making is significant, as well as the hotel accommodation as well. No, that's all I wanted to say, and thank you all for doing what you do, and be part of the Tuesday events.